All right, we are back. That was at the very least a little less stressful than the first one. We're joined by Dr. Wes Bellamy, co-founder of Our Black Party. Before we even get into the debate, thank you for being here with us. And just tell our soulmates about the Our Black Party.
Sure. So thank you so much for having us. Our Black Party is a political organization that's focused on centering the needs of Black folk. Our tagline is very simple. Before you were a Democrat, before you were a Republican, before you had any political affiliation, you were Black. And there's nothing wrong with Black folk owning our politics. There's nothing wrong with Black folk centering our politics. And in fact, it is time for us to do just that, which was clearly indicated by President Abraham Lincoln Trump tonight.
Every time he says this nonsense, but I've done more for Black Americans than maybe Abe Lincoln. It's so offensive.
It's paternalistic.
Incredibly offensive.
It's disgusting. It comes off very slave mastery.
But here's the truth about that. I mean, this is a point that I think a lot of us have to take into account. President Abraham Lincoln was also the same individual who believed that Black folks were unintelligent. He's the same individual that shortly or during the time of the Civil War, he actually encouraged African Americans to leave the country and go to Africa. He thought we would be better off there. He's the same individual who essentially blamed Black folk for the Civil War. And he clearly stated that he didn't believe that Black folk would have the ability to be able to live and exist in the same world as white folk. So him comparing himself to Lincoln, in fact, is on par. They do things for their own self. They do things and try to specifically use Black folk for their own benefit and say that they do things to help us, when in fact they're only doing it to propel themselves. So he is on par with Lincoln. Neither one of them have done anything to ensure that we need to be where we are. And I'll leave it at that.
What are your overall reactions to the debate? Excuse me. Let's just get right into it, because that was, again, much different than the first one. I feel like Biden was very, very strong. Such a difference from the man we saw during the primary debate. And Trump seemed a little bit thrown off his game when he didn't get to use his normal tactics. There was not a lot of screaming and interrupting, and the moderator was a little stricter than we've seen before. What were your thoughts?
Oh,
Dr. Sean? Oh, Claudia, was that you? Go for it.
I was going to say real quick, Kellyanne Conway, I believe, was giving him the advice that, just let Biden go, because, if you just let him talk uninterrupted, he'll just get himself into, uncharted territory and he'll flop, Mm-hmm. He'll make a flub, he'll mess up. And we saw tonight, that wasn't the case. It was not the case. I'm going to go ahead and say Biden won both debates. And it was very clear. He was prepared. He wasn't childish. He was very knowledgeable about all as much criticism as Trump tried to give him for being away and off the campaign trail. Well, it seems it is very obvious that one candidate took this debate seriously and the other one thought, I'm just going to wing it like I always do.
Sean, what about you? What do you think?
No, I agree with that. I think that Biden did not have a significant stumble. He did not, he adjudicated himself in a way that made him look presidential, at the very least made him appear as if he could handle the job, that he was competent with the facts and all of the predicaments that a president has to deal with. There were two things that were newsworthy. The first one is that Biden put some face between him and Obama on immigration. An acknowledgement that progressive communities have critiqued Obama for having a woeful immigration policy, and Biden separating himself from that legacy and saying, I would have a different approach. And then for some people on the right, the news out of this is going to be Biden is going to end the oil industry, which, if you understand anything about progressive politics, democratic politics as a form of that, it's always been the goal to end how the big gas and big oil affect the economy. So that's not real news, but they're going to turn it into something that it's not.
Wes, what about you? Overall thoughts after watching that?
Well, I think that it's clear Vice President Biden has much more, the temperament undoubtedly to be able to run the nation, but I think that doesn't really say a lot in comparison to what we currently have in the White House. I was really pleased to see Vice President Biden pressure the president in regards to addressing his tax issues, pressure him in regards to give us a plan in terms of what you're going to do for healthcare, pressing him in regards to tell us what you would do specifically revolving around issues revolving around race. I think neither of them were as strong as I would like for them to have been, specifically when they talk about Black folk. But I think that there's an opportunity for us moving forward. And when I say us, I mean Black folk, to ensure that our needs and our issues are met by continuing to put pressure on one of the candidates. And I think that's going to be the individual who's actually elected.
Let's touch on that.
I just really want to say, I agree with you, but I think the one benefit here is one candidate, would be in fact open to working with Black people, while the other one has 0 Black people around him, except Tim Scott, if you want to even count that in with Ben Carson. So I do appreciate Joe Biden taking responsibility in a way and saying that he did make a mistake with the crime bill, because that has been his Achilles heel.
That was important.
In Black people. And he did say that. And I've yet to see Donald Trump ever apologize or say I was wrong about something. And I think I'm optimistic about that start. I am. It's not like the end all be all, but it is a start in the right direction.
No. I mean, the accountability piece, I think, is funny. Like, I'm not being facetious. President Trump was asked to take accountability in regards to how he handled the virus. And he says, I will take accountability, but this is China's fault. Like, that's essentially what he always does.
Yeah.
I want to talk about 2 things that happened. Kind of, I guess you could say, the biggest stains on both of their political legacies, or 2 of the biggest stains, obviously the crime bill and the family separations at the border. And both of these things do disproportionately affect Black people, because as far as immigration, we do know that ICE consistently detains more Haitian people, more Haitian immigrants than people from any other nation. And obviously, when it comes to the crime bill, I think Trump would even try to do his best of pointing out how that specifically affected Black men. What we did have, though, were different reactions, and as far as accountability and what they thought about those 2 obvious stains. You hear Joe Biden say, the crime bill was a mistake, and this is what I'm going to do to fix it. When it comes to family separations, at the end, Joe Biden was really trying to drill in. There are 500 kids that don't know where their parents are. And I don't know if you caught it, but very quickly before they moved on, Trump responded to that by saying, good.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Is anybody surprised? I mean, accountability is an extension of your ability to track your own humanity. If you're not in touch with your humanity, then you're not going to be able to muster what it takes to be accountable for what you do to other people. And we cannot underestimate. And I think progressives have done ourselves a disservice, because you cannot underestimate, and this 4 years have shown us this, you cannot underestimate integrity. It may not be, integrity doesn't mean perfection, but it means that you have at least a working paradigm out of which you understand what is in the best interest for the common good. We've been living under the tyranny of a man who cannot locate that. So accountability for him is not an option. Everything for him reduces down to how it affects him.
It never even seemed like he even batted an eye when that topic came up, as opposed to Joe Biden. That you can see that he feels some kind of way about it, And it seems like Trump is just like, yeah, well, you did this. Well, Obama did that. That's his response. Like, very heartless and childish. And that's why he's able to behave this way and govern this way, because humanity doesn't, like, where's the humanity? Like, where's the heart? I don't know.
Wes, what do you think?
I think specifically when it comes to the immigration issue, this is one that is not receiving enough attention, in my personal estimation. When we put this into real context, there are over 540 children who are separated from their family, and we literally do not know where they are. Like, let's let that sink in. Children who we as a country, the immigration committee, the individuals who are overseeing them, do not know where these children are. And I was listening to a story about it earlier today, and then reading up on it actually during the debate. And it's like, literally, these children, many of which have come from backgrounds in which their parents were simply trying to find a better life. Trump is calling them, saying that they're coming over with coyotes, which, for those who aren't familiar with the lingo, that's essentially what they use as a guide to come into the country and come in through different channels and whatnot. But like you all alluded to, the lack of empathy, his lack of humanity, and the fact that he can't even atone and say, we're going to find the children, we're going to allocate more resources to connect them with their families. Like, in the reports that I was reading, they were saying maybe some of them are with family members throughout the country. Maybe some of them are, we don't know. They could be on the street. They could be in prostitution rings. They could have been sex trafficked. Who knows where they are? They could be dead. Those are children. I'm a father of 4 daughters. Like, that means that hits different. in the words of SZA and Ty Dolla $ign. It's different.
Yeah. And
we don't know where these children are. That should be a huge story, and that there alone, in my opinion, disqualifies this individual from, amongst the several other things, from leading our nation.
Brooke,
Sean, what were you going to say?
Yeah, Wes, I was sorry to cut you off there, but Brooke, it take everything that Wes just said and how well he articulated it and the passion by which he did it, and notice that when this subject came up, Donald Trump rather focused on who built the cages, not the dilemma of the children, not the hurting of the parents, but who built the damn cages.
And on top of the kids and parents being separated and not being able to have a way to reunite them, I mean, there was all kinds of horrific reports we've heard of child molestation, being raped, forced hysterectomies of Latino women, much like they used to do to Black women back in the day. This is like ridiculous. And where's the outrage? And then you have your wife with the BS Be Best campaign. And it's like, it just doesn't, like, it's bullshit. Like, there's no truth to it. And I don't understand how anyone can still support this man, especially the people that don't even get like the benefit. I understand some of the rich folks, right? Like, okay, I get it, it helps your pockets. But the ones that are poor and are not affected financially, do not benefit from this, but it makes them feel good. Oh yeah, strong man, strong white man, we back in, we holding these people down. I don't get why y'all support this, especially you so-called Christians that say that, you know, the evangelicals that claim like this is, you know, the party of values. I have not seen one value in 3.5 years. This man,
you get it, Claudia.
It's like crap. If a Black man would have done, we already know what that's going to be. But you know, it's like the double standard.
White supremacy. It's white supremacy. We all know. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I mean,
no.
We know what it is, and this president has doubled down in his efforts in regards to bringing out the worst of those, and he knows that he's trailing in the polls. And although I believe that polls don't vote, and we can't trust polls, but he understands that his truest path to victory is doubling down in his efforts and speaking specifically to his base. As President Obama said yesterday when he was in Philadelphia, if any individual found out that he had bank accounts in China, they would be calling him Beijing Barry. He knows this. Like Trump plays on this. He knows that he can get away with certain things that others can't. And he plays into the fact that we live in a white supremacist nation. He knows that the majority of the individuals who live here believe that way. And if that is truly his base, he has to do all that he can to bring them out, which means that we have to come out and vote in the opposite fact.
And if I can add this, Brooke, real quick, it shows once and for all that the American dream is financial, not ethical.
Yeah.
And that's what's wrong with it, is that people are willing to sublimate their moral values in order to increase their income. I don't give a damn how much of a tax cut he gives me. He cannot have my dignity.
One of the most appalling moments to me tonight was when the question was brought up about the oil processing plants and how it affects Black people that are living by. And Trump's defense was, well, they make a lot of money. I was like, I can't believe this.
They have great jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, but what good is those great jobs if you have a cancerous growth out of it? You got a hump in your back, or you're sterile, you're infertile because of it. We also Aaron Brockovich and what went down with that. That was actually with fracking, but we've seen the effects of the people. Look at the water in Flint, flames coming out, oil coming out. Like it's just. Anyways, I need November 3rd. Come on, man, I need to get this over with.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit more, Wes, about our Black Party. I really want you to break it down because there's a big focus on Election Day. We are all kind of waiting for Election Day, but our Black Party, you're a lot focused on what happens on November 4th and 5th and 6th, right? Tell me about that. What are you all doing?
Yeah, so our focus is, well, again, we're encouraging everyone to vote. We're encouraging everyone to, as our partner Diddy came out and said last week, you know, number one objective and one of the things that we're looking for is Trump needs to be out of office. We all understand that. But for us, our goal is also, again, what happens on November 4th? What happens on February 20th? What happens on March 16th? How are we building political power in our local communities? How are we running candidates for city council meetings, for city council seats, for local judges, for school board? How are we running up and down the ballot? How are we getting individuals in the state house? so we can truly bring forth political power and enable Black folk to be able to truly control our destinies. So we want to work to build, again, political education amongst our community. We're looking to educate folks on how you run for office. Those who are in office, how do you bring forth equitable practices? If you don't know anything about politics, or you're just getting in the game, how do we teach you kind of politics one-on-one? And then from a state perspective, how do we build out throughout these states? We've had several state caucus calls, about 17 to date. And what we're looking to do, again, is coalesce power to ensure that our folks are ready to take control of our destiny. You can be Republican, you can be Democrat, you can be independent, but as long as you center the needs of Black folk, you can be down with our Black Party. And we don't have to be beholden to anyone else. There's nothing for us to be afraid of. Just as we've seen with the Tea Party, just as we've seen with working families parties, just as we've seen with others. There's nothing wrong with us ensuring that our needs are met. And in order to do so, we have to get started, which is why we're starting prior to the end of this election, opposed to waiting until after November 3rd.
What exactly is Diddy's involvement in our Black Party? Because obviously he came out, as soon as he starts talking about it, it brings a lot of attention to it. And then there's a lot of questions. People want to know, wait a minute, what does he have to do with this?
Yeah, so Diddy's one of our partners. Much love and respect to Diddy. He's been with us from very early on. We actually launched this, and we've been on this network on a few different occasions.
You've been on the Black Report.
Yeah, we've been on the Black Report. We launched it in July 14th to be exact. And I think we were on here that exact date, kicking it off. You are one of the first people to find out. And we've been building throughout that time. Again, having these state caucus calls, going to different places, talking to organizers, talking to activists, talking to elected officials, current and former. And again, just building up the infrastructure of the party. One of the things that we've been wanting to do with Diddy is ensure that when we bring him out to show his support, that we're strategic in how we do so. And we know that when Diddy comes out and says he's with something, it brings forth headlines. I mean, we've seen an enormous jump in terms of our Instagram following, people who have tapped in and signed up to be a part of, join the movement. And now what that allows us to do is circle back in and continue to do the work. So we have a 90-day plan in which we're currently working on, kind of like the first 100 days, quote unquote, since we've relaunched. And what we're looking to do is bring forth any and everybody who wants to and believes in Black folk owning their politics. We need you with us. Come on, www.ourblackparty.org. So I'm looking forward to Brooke, Claudia, and Dr. Sean to join.
Well, yeah, Wes, I'm with it 100%. I'm for freedom, equity, and equality for everybody, especially Black folks. Yeah. But I just want to add this piece that as we get to November 4th, let's remember that we're voting now, right? Mm-hmm. The election day is on the 3rd. It's a two-step process, and I think that's the genius of the point that you're making, Wes, is that it's not a one-hit wonder. It's a two-step process. We vote and organize, and if you do both of those, then Black people can have what we finally deserve, at least some of it.
Right. I mean, I'm sorry, Claudia.
No, go for it. What? I want to hear from you.
No, Claudia, I think Claudia says.
I was saying to keep the momentum going because it's been amazing. Like one of my friends did not have any idea about how the process goes. I had to literally keep her on the phone and get her information. And I typed her address in and her information to get her registered. I said, you will not register for this election. And I made her do it. And she's like, okay, so what do I do now? And I'm like, you look up where you go vote. You know what I mean? Really voting. And not to make fun of her, but it just made me think, damn, there's probably a lot of people out here that don't even know the basic first step.
Yeah, that's literally the point of us starting the party. I mean, if we're being candid, we're called a party, quote unquote, a name, but we're actually a 527 political organization, which allows us to serve as a hybrid PAC, as well as eventually, as the time moves forward and as the culture needs us to, if we need to run ballots, run candidates and so forth, we have the ability to do that. But the political education piece, like I have friends similar to you, Claudia, very smart folks. I know I got a friend of mine who's an engineer. He has 2 master's degrees, and he was telling me a very candid story. He went in to vote in the primary. He was like, I watched the news, but I don't know who to vote for. All right, so I voted, and now what? And that's no fault. Like, we're not here to cast blame or judge anyone, but we do believe that we have a responsibility as an organization and as a people, and those of us who are kind of in this political field, to educate others. It's not every day that we talk about this. This isn't sexy. Like Diddy coming out and saying, yo, I'm with our Black Party that causes and raises a lot of headlines, but the actual work of organizing and having these state caucus calls and so forth, that's not sexy. Going and doing political education, and going to different localities and talking about real issues and developing that work, it's not sexy, but it's needed. It's necessary. So that's why we have to do the real work.
You know, if I may, to give it some historical context, the powerful thing that Wes is doing, it has a long tradition in the
We're doing. Wes ain't doing it by himself. We're doing.
Stop interrupting me, Wes. The powerful thing that Wes is doing, and all of us are helping him do, has a long tradition in the Black community. This is how the Panthers started. This is what happened in Lowndes County. It's hitting the ground. It's Black people embracing their identity as citizens, not just as voters, right? Not just as objects of racial strife, but as citizens who have the right to guide this democracy. It's a very powerful thing.
Thank you, Dr. Sean. I appreciate that.
I want to talk about the Black male vote. Black men who are voting, Black men maybe who are not voting. A lot of attention is being paid to it. And so I think we should spend a little time on it. We talked about President Obama, his 2 campaign stops in Philadelphia. He had that huge drive-in rally, but he also before that spent a significant amount of time with a bunch of Black men, community leaders in Philadelphia, speaking directly to them, telling them, you know, that they were the reason that he got into politics. Kind of this unseen group of people. As far as the debate tonight, obviously 2 sides, both they've said in many different ways, we are looking for Black men. They want Black men to vote for them. But who, from what you saw tonight, it actually said anything from your opinion that really was speaking to Black men? Did you see that tonight?
Is that for me or Dr. Sean?
It's for both. It could be for Claudia too.
I yield to my younger colleague.
I mean, I'll be candid. I've been kind of making the rounds, quote unquote, talking about this. I don't necessarily feel courted per se. I don't necessarily believe that the issues of Black men are often addressed. I think it's one thing to have barbershop talks and, you know, to come out with quote unquote platinum plans that really look like Family Dollar plans. Like it's one thing to say you're going to do these things, but to actually engage us to find out what we need, it takes a lot more. Like Black men, just like any other group, are not a monolithic group. While we understand that Black women and the sisters hold it down, they're the most loyal group of people on the planet and smartest group of people on the planet, first and foremost. But in the Democratic Party specifically, they're the most loyal group, the individuals who are the most dependable. And then brothers kind of fall in line with that. If you look at the 2016 election, Black men voted for Hillary Clinton. Over 80% of all Black men voted for Hillary Clinton. So to that point, though, I think we're often taken for granted. There's a large emphasis on the sisters because we know the work in which they bring forth. But the brothers, in some regards, and just based off conversations I've had, often feel like an afterthought. And that's something that hasn't been addressed, in my opinion, in a tangible way that makes us feel wanted throughout this campaign from both sides. And I'm hoping that moving forward, we can get some real synergy around addressing our issues. Like we have mental health needs as well. We have business needs, things that we want to do as well. We want to be involved parents. We want to be able to treat our women and afford a lifestyle to be able to take care of ourselves, take care of our families and so forth as well. And those things aren't always addressed in tangible ways. So I'll leave it at that.
Can I just say real quick, during the last election, I remember cringing every time, like being proud and also cringing at the same time. They would constantly say, you know, Black women, like 95% of us, you know, are you know, we're the backbone of the Democratic Party. And at the time, it wasn't a huge gap between Black women and Black men, but I felt there could be some backlash from constantly saying Black women, Black women, Black women, where it could cause some divide. I felt like I saw it coming. And that's exactly what happened this election, where Trump set out to pick off 20% of Black male voters for this election. And he's seeming like he's getting close to that. It seems to be kind of working a little bit. And we're seeing people that I would never think is coming up and like endorsing this guy. And I felt like that was the beginning of it last time around, where they just really made an effort to, it's almost like giving one kid a whole bunch of gifts and oh, this is my son. And, you know, he got all straight A's and the other kids over here like, well, what about me? And that's going to cause some resentment, or it's going to cause something. And I feel like they were a little bit effective with that.
I mean, brothers are already super sensitive as it is. We don't always show. I mean, we're already sensitive, so we feel as if we're not being addressed in certain ways. It can lead us to go, you know, in another direction. But we have time, and I think we have the opportunity, regardless of what happens in this upcoming on November 3rd, for us to get it right. And I believe that we will get it right. And if you want to get it right, join us, www.ourblackparty.org.
Dr. Sean, quick thoughts before we go?
Brooke, I was just going to say, I think the question black men need to ask is this: would Brother Malcolm vote for Trump? Would Marcus Garvey vote for Trump? Would James Baldwin do it? And if these giants of our masculinity would not do that, then why the hell are you doing it?
Can I use that?
I think we have to go. This has been a great night, though. I'm always glad to do this with you all. And Wes, thank you for being here with us. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having all of us. Thanks for watching our Foxhole Live presidential debate watch party. We appreciate it.
I like Wes.
Good night.
Yes. Good job, Wes.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.